Welcome to the Art Den, where we meet all kinds of artists who create all kinds of art. We gain an insight into their lives and find out what inspires them. I'm Judy, and my guest today is Huddersfield-based artist Chris Leeper. Inspired by seeing the original Star Wars movie in 1977, all Chris wanted to do was draw spaceships for a living. He became interested in design and enrolled at Huddersfield University to study product design. But he soon realised that what he really wanted to do was be an illustrator. Now Chris's colourful and quirky illustrations sell locally and worldwide as prints, cards and other merchandise. His company name is Jesmond Cat Designs, and Chris describes himself as the human interface of Jesmond. Cats are well represented in the designs, and an image of 3 cats in a spaceship is a big favourite. Using a totally different style, Chris also produces black and white images using fine liner pens, which evoke the work of the Golden Age illustrators. Join us as we delve into Chris's experiences as an artist and hear some of his stories. Hi Chris, thank you for joining us today.
No, it's quite all right. Thank you very much for inviting me here, Judy.
Absolute pleasure. Thrilled that you're coming on. Could you tell us about your journey from product design to Jesmond Cat Designs?
Right, well, yes, as you've said in the introduction, I one of the groundbreaking moments in my life was seeing the original Star Wars film as a nipper, and after that I started becoming interested in sort of fantastic objects such as laser pistols, space bracelets, and into my teens when I went to secondary school, and that was All Saints Catholic High School here in Huddersfield. I started doing design technology lessons, and I started to become more interested in the basis of concept design, kind of designing things that could be made into real life objects and mass manufactured. So yes, and I thought, well, if I want to do things like drawing spaceships for a living and doing fantastic backgrounds, I thought design might be a way into that. So I became aware. I did my design and technology GCSEs and A levels, and I became aware of product design and graphic design as a potential career. Now, back then, I think it was almost mandatory that before you could do anything like a creative degree, you had to do a year's art foundation course. So I did mine at what we used to be Percival Whitley in Halifax. I think it became Calderdale College, and then I enrolled on a 4-year product design degree at Huddersfield University, which I enjoyed for the first couple of years. We did lots of design related projects. The course was more heavy on the engineering side of design and the manufacture materials of design. So we learnt about how to come up with initial concepts, how to visualize them, and then had to kind of compromise maybe on how to make them work, which would maybe you end up kind of compromising some of the aesthetic visual side of it, and I preferred that bit. I was good at making things look good, and then I could kind of say, right, hand it to an engineer and say, oh, make that work for me please. I'm not bothered about the mechanics of it. So I have to say, probably by the end of the course I was thoroughly cheesed off with the world of product design, and I only just scraped my degree. So after picking myself up, dusting myself down for a while, I thought, well, I just want to draw kind of fantastic things and not have to worry about how they're going to be made or manufactured. So that's when I started exploring drawing and realising the images that were in my head, or the things that I got inspiration from. And just using the tools that I'd used during my degree, things like on design, it's mainly things like magic markers, if you remember those, the ones that used to smell of alcohol, and, fine liner pens. If you were, a bit more clever, you could do airbrushing. You could use airbrushes as there were then. I was never good enough to be an airbrusher. But designer's gouache as well. And I started, keeping sketchbooks and trying to do finished pieces. Firstly, they were abstract stuff. And then after a while, I started developing quite a kind of bright, playful style. And I started doing things like Celtic knotwork and entering local competitions and local exhibitions. I think enrolling in life drawing classes to try and, improve my hands. Although I will say on the design course and on the art foundation course, there were lots of different disciplines you could learn. So, as part of those courses, there was modules on 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional design and life drawing classes as well. And so I think at this time we're kind of going into the late 90s, the early to mid 2000s. And so, yes, I was kind of watching what other people in my situation did, other artists and illustrators, and visiting art fairs and craft fairs and noticing that as well as their original paintings, they produced prints and cards and merchandise to sell as well. I thought, that's a good idea. How do I start doing that? And I think that was where the seeds of Jesmond Cat Designs as a company was born. I thought, well, let's try and make this official. Let's start producing some merchandise based on the pictures I've done. So I'm having to look at, source out printers and starting to things like totting up how much they cost to be made, things like that. Now, at this time, I think I moved up to the northeast in the year 2000 to Teesside. I was living in Darlington. And I think fast forward a couple of years on, when I was thinking about, making more of a serious fist of what I was doing. So I think the Newcastle United, the football club, were going through quite a purple patch at the time. I think they had Bobby Robson as the manager, and they're doing quite well. And I was a keen football enthusiast. I was sort of kept on top of the football, what was going on in football. And, I started taking more of an interest in them. And I noticed there was an area outside now at Newcastle called Jesmond. I thought, that's a great word. That's a great name for someone, and the seeds of that, and thinking up this kind of, I think I'd started drawing cat characters by then, so whimsical cat characters with personalities. And I thought, this could be a good idea for a cat character, a grumpy northeastern cat wearing the Newcastle United football shirt with attitude, kind of an old-fashioned footballer's no-nonsense attitude, gives 110% on the pitch, takes no prisoners, hard but fair in the tackle, things like that.
Yeah.
And that was the sort of genesis of Jesmond Cat Designs. I thought Jesmond Cat can be the figurehead for my little company, and I might as well, because I don't see myself as a fine artist because of my background. I see myself more as a designer and illustrator. So I thought, I'll call it Jesmond Cat Designs.
Brilliant.
And that was kind of born in about 2008, 2009, I think. And since then.
How would you describe your artistic style, and what techniques do you use?
It's quite bright. It's as I said, I don't see myself as a fine artist. I'm more of an illustrator, if anything, a designer. My art has been referred to by others as naive art and outsider art, and I don't mind, those terms. I can see where they're coming from. I suppose outsider art might be more relevant because I've not gone down the typical route of going to fine art college or anything like that. I went more into design and realization. Yes, I developed a kind of playful style that lends itself probably to children's book style. So it's and going on to that, and some of my development work in the 2000s, I did end up illustrating some children's book for a local children's story author in the Northeast. So that provided a good grounding to develop this kind of colourful style.
Great, yeah.
I think initially I did those in designer's gouache and then gradually moved to acrylics. Yes, I would say since 2005, that was the first time I used acrylic paint. So I've been using it primarily for the last 20 years, and I'm still learning kind of how to use it as well. My style, I brought along a piece, if you don't mind me doing a bit of show and tell about
please, yeah.
how my styles evolved. I tend to lay down a dark colour as the base. I don't know who it was. I saw an artist on telly years ago who said, "Oh, you know, if you're intimidated by a white canvas, you've got to kill it with colour first, and then you can paint on top of that colour."
Yeah.
And then I think I might have seen somebody else who used kind of dark tones to kind of add a bit of depth to the subsequent piece.
Yeah.
So I started doing that, and here I've kind of used a dark turquoise and then painted light colours over it. But I kind of use what's been described as a scumbling technique.
Right.
I'd never heard of that word until recently. It was another artist who said, "Oh, you scumble, you use scumbling." Basically loading my paintbrush up and kind of dry brushing it, i.e. not mixing it with any water. So it's when it kind of starts to wear out, some of the colour shows through as well.
It's great. It's fabulous. That I love that. I think that scumbling might come from like you know, those sort of like decorators that do those fancy techniques, like marbling and stuff and that on wood. I think scumbling. I think I've heard of that in there, because I'm very partial to scumbling. I've never called it scumbling, but I don't know what it's called.
No,
I presume it's called scumbling. Yeah.
I kind of saw it as a type of glazing technique, thinking just about dry brushing.
Right. Yeah.
I used to be interested in kind of the world of Dungeons and Dragons and those collectible miniature figures that you can paint, the pewter and metal figures, and some of the painting techniques from there is where they call dry brushing, where you kind of waft some paint over the top of the figure, but it doesn't touch the kind of inner part of the figure. It touches the tops, but not the kind of in the sort of deep depths of the figure. So with this, I used to apply very thick textured strokes of the base colour, so you could see the brush strokes as well. Let it dry, and then I would dry brush over it, and you could see where the paint was stuck to the top of the paint strokes, but in the sort of crevasses in between them, there was still hints of maybe blue or whatever colour I'd use. Sometimes it's a dark green. It depends on the piece, really. If I'm going for a more gothic-y look, I tend to use maybe a dark purple or a magenta, maybe. And so on top of that, I paint my light colours, and then on top of then comes the subject. This example, it was going to be the Egyptian god Anubis, represented as a statue taken from the tomb of Tutankhamun.
Fabulous. Love it.
This one never came to fruition, but I did do a more completed version, which has been exhibited.
It's so cool that you kept that like that, because quite often they're let's see it.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Turn it there.
No,
I tend to keep my unfinished ones because I can always paint over them, paint a new piece over them. I try and reuse them where I can. I mean, some of my pictures as well, there might be 2 or 3 paintings that never quite made it to the finish underneath this finished painting. So, you know, if art historians of the future were to start scraping away at the pieces, I don't know why they would, of course, but if they did, they might find other unfinished pictures underneath them.
Yeah, they do it with X-ray, don't they? They do it with X-ray now.
Yes, I think they can. I think they can see what's underneath. They do it for some of the more famous artists. They might do it for mine.
Yeah, they might. I have to say, I think in its own right that is absolutely fabulous. You know, I'd hate to paint over it. I think a lot of people would be very very much like it as it is, you know, which I do. I think it's very powerful. Obviously, your finished product is a different animal altogether, as
Well,
you might say.
It prevents a build-up in the studio of unused canvases, and me thinking, well, these are going to have to go on the fire soon, if you know, or get rid of them, or chuck them in the River Cone, or not that I'm advocating fly tipping.
No,
not
of
of
course
course,
not.
especially not in Kirklees.
No. So what subjects do you paint? So we've got cats, and where do you find your inspiration? Yeah, what are the subjects? What are all the sorts of subjects you paint?
I tend to go back to a lot of the elements of my childhood, old TV shows, old books that I read. I was an avid TV watcher in the 70s, you know, growing up, particularly a lot of American import programs that used to be on the, you know, for children, like The Incredible Hulk and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, things like that. And then allied to that, British TV at the time, I don't know if it was a phase they were going through in the 70s, but they made a lot of scary children's programs in the 70s, things like Children of the Stones and Sapphire and Steel, a series called King of the Castle that myself and my older brother used to sit down avidly and watch, you know, before our tea. And images from those still influence my output today. I think during the 1980s, I think they were broadcast on ITV, a series based on the Moomins by Tove Jansson, if you remember.
Yeah, I love the Moomins.
And this, I think they've done a recent animated,
more
polished animated series now, but this one in the 80s, it was quite an eerie stop motion, I think, puppet, almost like fuzzy felt puppets across the screen with some very out there music to accompany it, and that was quite inspirational. And I do the odd Moomin picture still now as well. Apart from that, I do lots of cats, as you've pointed out, which is no hardship because I love cats. You know, they've always been an inspiration. Going on to other things like puffins, dinosaurs. I like dinosaurs. These are sort of things which I think would appeal to both children and adults.
Yeah.
You know, there's lots of us who still kind of have a liking for stuff we experienced as a child, and I don't know anybody who doesn't like dinosaurs. You know, I still love dinosaurs, and sort of drawing them and collecting the little models when I can as well.
Oh, nice.
And I've started doing more landscapes, but more kind of stylized landscapes. I'm not a formal landscape painter, but because I do, like, I've become more interested in the countryside. Well, I think I was as a child, and then I kind of, you know, it got lost in other things that you could be interested in when you're growing up. And I've started to kind of reignite my passion for nature and the countryside. So I've started kind of trying to sketch birds, hills, sort of mountains, more maybe towards the fantastical. This again is based on some of the books I used to read as a child. I was very influenced by the Chronicles of Narnia, for example, and The Hobbit, you know, The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And some of these books where the illustrators of those books kind of represented the landscapes in a more stylized way than, you know, just what you might see in kind of one of the old Ladybird books, where they're more kind of finished formal pieces of art.
Yeah. Oh, fabulous. And what are your sketchbooks like? So you'll have like pictures of landscapes, birds, and all sorts of different things.
They do, yes. I use them as the kind of combination of sketchbook, scrapbook, and diary. So there are drawings in there, but there's also a lot of written notes, you know, jotting downs of things I might be thinking of at the time. Scrapbooks is pieces of so articles or adverts from magazines that I've kind of thought, oh, that looks good, I like the colours in that, or I like the texture of that, I'll rip that out and stick it in, and then maybe do some ideas based on that picture. There's my own philosophy about sketchbooks is that they're not there to do finished pieces in. They're there for kind of working things out, you know, getting the sort of vague, nebulous ideas that are in your head, kind of making them more concrete. And it doesn't matter if the first attempt is rubbish, you know, that's what your sketchbook is there for. It's for working things out. Like we did on my design degree, you'd start off with the vague form of what you were going to design, maybe I don't know, a lawnmower, you know, a fancy lawnmower for a garden, and you do your first attempt at it, and then you get your layout paper, which is this sort of transparent, translucent paper, lay it over, and then kind of go around it again and polish it a bit, add embellishments, and you do that again and do that again until you brought through the finished kind of look of it. And that's similar with sketchbooks. There's bits in there from old sketchbooks that I've thrown out, but I've kind of ripped out all the good bits and stuck them in my new sketchbooks, thinking, oh, that was a great idea I had 20 years ago. That might still become a finished piece, so I'll keep that.
That's a good idea.
There's a chap I follow on Facebook. You probably won't mind me mentioning him.
No.
You might not know I'm mentioning him. A chap called Dave Seed, who's an artist who lives at the other end of the country.
Right.
He's had a similar path to me, where most of his life he's worked in a non-artistic role, and then has retired, and then he's found time to kind of, you know, reignite his passion. And he every so often he posts some very informative views on things like sketchbooks, and you know, his view on them, and they're an adjunct to thinking. You know, the kind of a supplementary sort of supplements, you know, your ideas that are in your head, and you know, they need to go from there to here, and you know, they're how you work it out, and you know, they're not for. I do see again on social media, you know, artists posting pictures of the sketchbooks with these beautiful, perfect finished pieces. And I think, well, that shouldn't really be there. It should be out there on the canvas. But then again, I mean, I follow, you know, quite a few famous, well-established artists, and they put their, you know, sketchbooks online for people to see or publish them. And I do think, you know, what they might term, oh, this is just a loose sketch I knocked off in an hour or so. I think, well, that's more polished than what I could do in the 2 months, you know, if I worked on that. So, but yeah, that's you know, they're about recording not just drawings, but kind of thoughts and things you've seen, things you've experienced. So they don't, you know, anybody who wants to know how to begin a sketchbook, you know, don't be worried if the first few pages of it are all just kind of notes, writing, you know, random things you thought of during the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's that pressure to sort of like, because people display their sketchbooks, but it's like, don't look at my sketchbook. You would see some of the sketches of some of my paintings. It's like, well, no way, you know. It's like I've done one particular painting that you know, a lot of people really like, and if you saw the first sketch of it, it's just like nothing like. You know, I have to sort of like work through that and carry on with it, because I know it's just so awful. For me, it's just really awful. And then finally it ends up as something.
Well, see, I've noticed people now seem a lot more interested in my process. So they're quite happy to see where it started. And I'm less self-conscious now about showing them, well, this is the thing I sketched on the back of a napkin in a restaurant, and I stuck it in my sketchbook, and then I did a few more ideas. I went down a rabbit hole, and this is where it didn't end up, and then this is how it's, you know, there's probably another picture of it that ended up in a different sketchbook. And I find people now, when they're asking me about my art, they're a lot more interested now is how I got to that finished piece.